tape that shows Kevin McCarthy was not telling the truth when he denied having said that he would call then President Trump and tell him that he should resign, an attempt to bolster the big lie, which is exactly the kind of thing you heard the former President Barack Obama talking about. The New York Times is reporting that Kevin McCarthy wanted Trump to resign in the wake of January 6th. The account coming from a new book by two Times reporters Alexander Burns and Jonathan Martin. This Will Not Pass is the name of the book, Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future. McCarthy called the reporting, quote, totally false and wrong, but tonight those reporters are releasing the audio of McCarthy in his own words.
Liz, you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Kevin. I guess there's a question. When we were talking about the 25th Amendment resolution, and you asked if what happens if it gets there after he's gone. Is there any chance? Are you hearing that he might resign? Is there any reason to think that might happen?
I've had some few discussions. My gut tells me no. I'm seriously thinking of having that conversation with him tonight. I haven't talked to him in a couple days. From what I know of him, I mean, you guys all know him too. Do you think he'd ever back away? But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to call him. This is what I think. No, it'll pass the House. I think there's a chance it'll pass the Senate even when he's gone. And I think there's a lot of different ramifications for that. Now, I haven't had a discussion with the Dems that if he did resign, would it not happen? Now, this is one personal fear I have. I do not want to get into any conversations about Pence party, anything like that. I mean, the only discussion I would have with him is that I think this will pass, and it would be my recommendation we should resign. I mean, that would be my take, but I don't think he would take it, but I don't know.
I mean, how much more? So much for the denial, right? CNN has reached out to McCarthy's office for a response, but we haven't heard back. So joining me now, CNN political director David Chalian. David, listen, we've caught people in lies before on videotape. We've heard it and, on audio tape, and still they somehow wrangle and wiggle out of it and pretend that it didn't happen. McCarthy denied that he told colleagues that he would push Trump to leave office, and we just heard him in his own words. So what?
Yeah, and when McCarthy offered the sweeping denial earlier today, he clearly wasn't dealing with the particulars of the reporting. He was just trying to dismiss it all in its entirety, which, of course, this is a thoroughly reported book from two of the best political reporters in the business. It seemed not the best approach for McCarthy to sort of just dismiss it out of hand. And now, of course, they have the goods to back up their reporting with this tape. So what I think is important here is, yes, it is a fascinating insight just 4 days after the insurrection, Don, to hear McCarthy in this conversation with his leadership team about the prospect of President Trump being impeached. It's amazing to hear him say, it's going to pass the House and they're going to convict him in the Senate even though he's gone. And it's exactly that rationale that he would be a former president that Republicans used in the Senate to not convict him in the impeachment. So this is a moment in time. And then just within days of this, you saw Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, all back off this attempt to try and diminish Trump in the party.
How do you, as a Republican, and you're not a Republican, but you're an analyst here, how do you as a Republican believe anything that comes out of Kevin McCarthy's mouth or any of the other folks who deny these things, and then there is evidence that they are lying? How do you continue to believe them and to be on the Republican and the Trump train? It is inexplicable to me.
Well, I mean, there are beliefs about things that are so proven false in reality such as the legitimacy of the 2020 election, like you were talking about Barack Obama including that in his speech out in California, in his speech in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, about how the disinformation that has spread, that nearly 40% of Americans believe that Joe Biden wasn't legitimately elected, that the election was rigged, even though there's been proof that there was no widespread fraud. So people can believe in what they want to believe. As it comes to whether or not Republicans on the Hill in McCarthy's conference are going to believe his denial, well, we'll have to hear what his response is now that the audio is out there. But I don't think they're all that interested in litigating whether or not McCarthy was telling the truth when he denied this story initially.
Mm-hmm. Is there any chance that we talked about what the former president said, you answered that part of the question. I mean, it really just sort of bolsters what the former president, Barack Obama, was saying about the big lie festering, people just making up ridiculous claims, and you just have to put it out in the ecosystem. People don't really have to believe it in order to poison the well. But is there any chance that the GOP will break from Trump, the big lie and his misinformation at this point, David?
I feel like you asking me, is there any chance the Republican Party breaks from Trump, I feel like has now been a question for the last 7 years since Donald Trump.
No matter how many ways I'm going to keep asking you as many different ways as I can.
Came onto the scene. But, we'll see if Donald Trump maintains the power that he seems to still have within the Republican Party. But Don, this is the concern here. This is why this is beyond just the political intrigue of what McConnell and McCarthy thought initially in the immediate hours and days after the insurrection. It's their decision actually to acquiesce to Trump. And when they realized that they didn't have their own conferences behind them in taking him on or trying to excommunicate him from the party because the base of the party was not interested in doing that, it's in that moment that the lie was given new life. So Donald Trump leaves office and then continues to spout the lie about election fraud to the point that there's a whole movement now, Trump-aligned movement, to get people elected into offices with oversight over our elections who are blatantly committed to a fraudulent story about a legitimate election. What does that mean for the legitimacy of the next election if indeed these folks are in charge of the actual vote count?
I mean, it is frightening, and it's not frightening because it's Republicans. It's frightening because it's being allowed to be done. I mean, look at what Ron DeSantis is doing with Florida with redrawing the lines. He's redrawing the lines, and then he gets to approve it himself. And then what you said about, the whole misinformation about the election and the people who are going to be in charge of the election. Listen, I think this is personal for the former president, this whole idea that he's raising this red flag about disinformation, because he was the victim, remember, of the birther conspiracy, which was a lie. Now another conspiracy theory is threatening our very democracy. The midterms are just around the corner, David. Where is this all heading? I know I'm talking to you as if you have a crystal ball, but
no, I mean, it's precarious. Our democracy is in a precarious position. And that's why Barack Obama is talking, of course, about democracies around the world, but he is also, as you note, really raising the alarm about the democracy, our democracy, right here at home, and how disinformation is destabilizing the very foundations of our democracy, the foundation of the democracy, a free and fair election. And so, yes, you're right. Obama has a history of this. This is a passion project of his for the entirety of his post-presidency. He's consumed by conversations about this because he sees a real potential danger. And that's not just this November in 22, in 24 and beyond. This is a call to strengthen the pillars of our democracy in this moment because we're in a perilous place.
We are, because this is beyond. And I want people to really understand what I'm saying. This is not about left versus right. If this is about left versus right, it would be about, well, what are the principles on the left? What do you want to do for people? What's on the right? Small government, right? Jack Kemp and that sort of Republic. The Republican Party now is in a place of disinformation and lies and conspiracy theories. And no matter how many times people say, well, this is not my Republican Party, this is where they are. Because when people do it, they defend it, or they don't say anything, which is a tacit, defense without saying anything. It's a lie or a sin of omission. So this is no longer about left versus right. This is about This is about our democracy in peril right now and who is going to stand up for it.
Yeah, certainly a significant enough swath of the Republican Party fits what you're describing. There are obvious examples where that's not the case. Liz Cheney, who you heard on that tape, one of them. I mean, she was just awarded the Profile and Courage Award from the Kennedy Library because this is somebody who has remained committed to putting principle above party.